Hey everyone, my name is Miley Cyrus. I'm just kidding. My name is Lyndon. Welcome back to the second part of this 3D text training series. We left off in part 1 with this 3D text foundation, and we're going to stylize this in so many different ways. In this particular video, we're going to create this lively, modern, orange, stylish 3D text. Love this design. We have some pretty intricate bevels, some like ambient occlusion shadows, and besides just creating this specific style, we're gonna cover so many advanced After Effects graphics techniques, because it's all about the knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. You've heard it before. And we also have a playlist, a link in the description, where you can watch part 1, but also where you can learn how to create other super stylish 3D text designs. Click on the playlist, have a look. We're also gonna create this text style, which looks really stunning to me as well. I also have the project file link in the description. It comes with templates for all the different stunning 3D text styles. You can easily customize the text or play around with the After Effects project file. And I also have a link to how to make money with After Effects. So also check out that link if you want to know how to make real pay your rent money with After Effects. By the way, I have all the different techniques and tutorial steps in the description, so you can easily skip forward to different parts of the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is create a wall, right? Oh my goodness, I sound like Donald Trump. We're gonna create a wall. So a wall is like one of the many different things you can do to like an animation environment. You can have a floor, a wall, reflection. You can have the text floating with a shadow. Lots of different things you can do. So let's just...
We're gonna build the wall. We have no choice.
And we're gonna use like maybe this kind of orange color. We're making it orange like Donald Trump also. So let's drag the wall below the extrusion here, and let's apply a gradient effect to the wall. Let's do a radial ramp here. I'll choose like this orange color here. This one, I'll make it a little more yellow. Okay, like that, and I wanna make it a 3D layer. And then I wanna push it back in 3D space a little bit, so it'll be positioned in 3D space behind the extrusion. So if we extrude the text 100 pixels, we wanna push it back 100. So now the wall is at the back of the extrusion, like that. Now let's scale it up a little bit. Maybe we want to stretch it horizontally. I know people, you know, like really vain people on Instagram love orange walls. It looks really cool. It's really, you know, it really is like lively, like the sun, yellow, vibrant. Now for the extrusion real quick here, I want to apply a tritone effect. So let's just choose this color here. Then we'll make it a little bit more saturated, a little bit darker, like that. So it differentiates from the background a little bit. Now, if you're having trouble customizing this foundation, this 3D text, I'll have a tutorial specifically for that in the playlist, link in the description. And we're going to do more things to stylize this extrusion, but we want to get to the gravy of this tutorial, the most important stuff first. Let's talk about how to stylize this 3D crap. I mean, no, 3D cap. I said that, not 3D crap. This is not crap, alright? But anyway, there are so many different ways you can stylize this 3D cap, so let's go in the cap composition. And we don't want to do our stylization in this 3D composition here. We want a flat, clean 2D composition to do our stylization work. So let's actually turn off the 3D real quick here. Let's pre-compose, move all attributes. Let's call this stylization. Hit OK. Let's turn the 3D back on and reparent it to the text controllers. Okay, so now we have this flat 2D composition to work in. That's going to make it so much easier for us to be creative. So basically the first thing I want to talk about is how you texturize this text. Oh wow, that pun was amazing. Texturize. So basically if you have like a texture, grunge texture, whatever, you just want to drag it below the text layer, and then you want to turn the text layer to stencil alpha. It's probably a little bit below the screen here. So stencil alpha, and boom, it's going to stencil to the shape of the text. So you can do whatever you want to for the texturization down here. You can mix textures, apply gradients, light sweeps, fractal noise, whatever, and it's going to stencil to the shape of this text, because at the top here we have this stencil alpha blending mode. So using this stencil alpha blending mode, it makes it really easy to be creative with the texture. We actually do not want a texture for this specific example. We just want kind of an orange color. So let's do this, and let's actually take down the brightness a good bit. And there we go. So I've organized a few different ways you can texturize your 3D text cap. So you can apply a gradient, which looks really nice for a lot of different styles. You can add fractal noise, an image texture, a reflection, a light sweep, and also what I call a gloss sweep, which looks really cool. So if you go through this 3D text series, you'll be like an expert for how to create all these different graphics with After Effects. So for this style, we're just gonna apply the fractal noise just to give it some, brightness variation. Makes it look more natural. So let's apply fractal noise to that orange solid. Turn the complexity down to 1 here so it'll render faster. I just like to add a fast blur to the fractal noise and make sure to repeat edge pixels. Otherwise, you're gonna have some transparency and the bevels won't work. It's very important to remember to repeat edge pixels. Let's just blur this out a lot. And turn the fractal noise blending mode to overlay or soft light, either one. And that'll keep it the same color, but then it'll add a little bit of brightness variation. Quite nice, and we can play with the contrast to adjust the intensity of this brightness variation effect. Alright, looking pretty great. It does look kind of dull. We have dull colors here, but that's because we want our bevels to stand out. So that brings us to the next step, is adding bevels to our 3D text. This is really just going to make the effect pop. So let's go into our cap composition. Let's go into the stylization here. And what we want to do is pre-compose all this texturization and lighting stuff. In fact, we don't even need that texture. That was just an example. So let's pre-compose these layers. Let's move all attributes. Call this, texture, lighting, whatever. Alright, now our goal for this style is to create this simple yellow stroke bevel, okay? But there's so many different styles and ways to create a bevel with the techniques we're going to learn in this series. And most of your options are going to be in, you right click, go to your layer style. There's just so much gravy in here. There's like a whole world of new effects in here. We have the bevel and emboss, which can create some really nice, sharp, hard chisel bevels. Super nice. We have the inner glow, which kind of mixes with that and creates some nice shimmery bevel effects. And we also have the stroke, which is the one we're going to use for this style. Now, I don't want to apply it directly to the layer because I want to be able to stylize the bevel. So what I'll do is create a bevel map and then apply a texture to that map. So I'll be free to stylize the texture as opposed to just, applying a solid stroke. So what I'll do is actually duplicate this, call this bevel map, and then I'll apply it to this bevel map. Then I'll have a map and I can stylize the bevel however I like based on the texture that is applied to that map. Okay, so we're gonna right click, go to layer styles, and choose stroke. Let's open up stroke here and let's change the color to white. Let's change the position from outside to inside. Change the size, let's make it a little bit more. Let's do like 7 or something like that. And you can already see this is a really cool detail to the text cap. You'll see how it looks in the main composition. We have something kind of stylish going on here, but we're gonna make this bevel look way better. Now to finish the bevel map, we need to make it black and white. So let's fill this in. Let's fill this orange stuff in with black, and it's not gonna cover the layer style stroke because this is important to note. Layer styles apply after effects. So they calculate after. So the fill is first, then the layer style. So that's why we're not covering that white stroke. Okay, so now we have the bevel map completed. Let's go ahead and apply a texture to this bevel map. So let's create a new layer, and we just want to do this yellow, kind of bright yellow for the bevel here. Let's hit OK, and let's do a Luma matte. So this yellow texture applies to that map, and you'll see we have lots of freedom to texturize this bevel based on this yellow solid. So one thing I do want to do is add some of that brightness variation stuff like we did inside the texture composition. So let's just apply fractal noise. And let's turn it off the matte so we can see what's going on. Let's turn the complexity down to like 1. And there's lots of different looks you can create. But for this example, I'm just going to blur it out. So let's do a fast blur. So we have something like this. Let's make sure to repeat edge pixels again. Then we need to turn the blending mode of the fractal noise either to overlay or soft light. Let's do soft light. So you can see it stays the same color, but now we got some of that brightness variation. You can play with the contrast to define how much luminous variation there is. So cool, and that's basically how you use the stroke bevel. Now I want to create multiple layers of this stroke bevel. I want to have like a silver stroke on the inside of this yellow stroke. So what I'll actually do is duplicate the map and the stroke texture. I'm gonna call this silver, and I'll change the color and go to layer, go to the solid settings and change the color to maybe like a gray. And I'll just increase the stroke size. So let's do like maybe 15, a little over double, like that. We have too much brightness variation. Turn the contrast down to like maybe 70. I'm gonna bring up the brightness a good bit, so 50. There we go, we have this nice silver stroke on the inside. Now it's hard to see the difference in the yellow and the gray. It's like kind of blended together. We don't want that. We want to see a kind of a contrasted difference. So what I'm gonna do is actually add a shadow right here to make it look like this yellow part is actually extruded a little bit beyond the surface of the text, and it kind of casts a shadow. This is gonna make it look a lot nicer and add more dimension to the effect. And you'll actually see on the next example we're gonna work on, this technique looks really nice. So how we're gonna do this, let's just duplicate this silver and the bevel map that goes with that. Let's do Control D, and we'll call this shadow. And we're just gonna create a little dark edge, like to make it look like it's extruded. So what we'll do is maybe turn the brightness to like -50, and then turn the stroke size down, maybe about 8 pixels. Okay, and we have a really nice outline. Now I'm gonna use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move the shadow bevel map down 1 pixel and to the right 1 pixel. Then I'll just turn down the opacity of this shadow texture layer, so maybe like 25. And then I want to add another shadow. So this is kind of like the geometry shadow, like the right side of this extruded bevel. But then I'm gonna add another shadow that actually casts from that geometry. So I just duplicate these 2 layers here, and basically I want to blur it onto the text with a CC radial blur. But to do that, I have to pre-compose the layer style, because remember, layer styles apply After Effects. The effect will not affect the layer style. So I have to pre-compose first. Layer, pre-compose, and make sure it's important to move all attributes. I'll grab the CC radial blur, apply this to the shadow map, and I want to zoom out here and move it just way up and to the left a little bit. Then I'll change the type from scratch to fading zoom and maybe do like 1 pixel. Aha, and you can see that it blurs onto the text a little bit, and that really gives the illusion that it's extruding beyond the text. And you can see these shadow techniques really added some dimension to this stroke bevel. Oh, yes. Now, there's a couple problems you need to look out for. First of all, when we blurred the shadow, you can see it blurred actually outside of the text boundaries a little bit. And there's actually a button here beside the track mat that'll only make the layer exist where there's opacity on the layers below itself, so it won't go outside of the text layer boundary. So that's a really cool button there. We also want to turn this on for the other shadow. And the next problem is you'll see that there's a little bit of dark edges on the semi-transparent areas around the text. And we can easily fix this with a really cool technique. Let's just apply an adjustment layer above everything and then use a refine soft matte effect. This is really cool. We'll just turn off calculate edge details, and this decontamination is going to fix those edges. We can also turn the increased decontamination up to 1. I really love that technique. So let's see how this cap looks in the main composition. It also looks pretty cool if you add a light sweep to the texture on the silver bevel. That's the cool thing about having this setup where we create the bevel map, then apply a texture to the map, because we get to style the texture however we want. Alright, so now let's create these shadows we have here. You can see it makes a huge difference, that ambient occlusion feel. And if you look on the extrusion, you'll see there's some shadows there as well. The extrusion does look kind of boring, so that's a nice way to add detail. So let's go ahead and do that first. Let's go into the extrusion composition, and let's just select both of these lights, hit AA for the light options, and we just want to turn on cast shadows. We also have to turn on cast shadows for the text layer itself, so go to the material options, turn on cast shadows, and there we go. This makes it look so much better. It adds that ambient occlusion feel, makes it look way more realistic. So we can basically play with the Z position of these lights to control how much of the shadow we want to project on the text. Probably want something like that. And the next thing you can do is play with the shadow diffusion. I like to turn this up to maybe like 20 pixels. That's just gonna blur the shadow, and it just, like I said, it adds that ambient occlusion feel. Makes the text look way more natural, and we can also play with the shadow darkness, maybe 75. Awesome tricks there. Now you can see the bottom of this text looks really dark, and what we'll do is actually just add an ambient light, sort of brighten up everything. So let's go to layer, new, light. Maybe we'll do an ambient light at intensity 25%. Something like that looks pretty nice. Now let's see how this looks in the main composition. Wow, so you can see that looks really nice. Now the last step, which is a really important step, it's an awesome technique, is to add shadows to the wall so it actually looks like the text is on the wall. You're going to see that this makes it look completely different. So to do that, I'm going to duplicate the cap composition in the project window. We'll call this shadow, and we'll drag this below the extrusion layer. Now we want to go in this shadow composition and push it back in Z space as much as the extrusion, so maybe 100 pixels. So it should be at the very back of the extrusion here. And basically we want to fill this in with black and blur it so it blurs onto the wall. So let's fill this in with black. Turn off the extrusion so you can see what's going on. Let's fill this in with black. And basically we're gonna blur this in a few different ways, create an awesome shadow. So the first way, we can just add a fast blur, just however much, we can turn the extrusion back on. And now you can see that it looks like the extrusion is making contact with the wall because of that shadow, that ambient occlusion feel. I'm gonna turn down the opacity of this layer. And we can also duplicate this shadow composition, Control D, and we can apply a CC radial blur, so we can kind of blur it down and to the right. So I'm gonna remove the fast blur and let's apply CC radial blur. Let's make the center point way up and to the left. And we'll change the type to fading zoom. And maybe we'll do the amount about 5. Something like that. Now you can see that looks a lot nicer with that radial blur. But anyway, you can see that blur makes the effect look so much nicer and so much more realistic. That ambient occlusion feel. It really feels like it's on a wall or on a surface. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up this orange 3D text design. Lust your eyes at this final result here. Very lively and professional. I hope we covered everything pretty well, but I'm going to try to respond to a lot of your comments, so please comment your questions. Okay, so let's now have a look at how to create this clean reflection sweep design. It uses mostly the same techniques we've already learned, so this won't take long at all. Now the first thing I want to have a look at is this reflection sweep we talked about. This is really simple. So how do you create this reflection sweep? Well, simple. Let me delete this solid. And remember, we have this set up with this dark gray solid that's stenciled to the shape of our text. We talked about that earlier in the tutorial. So let's create a new solid. And basically we're just gonna mask the reflection sweep shape. So let's just grab the ellipse tool, or you can grab the rectangle tool, whatever shape you want. And basically we're gonna draw this shape. I'll just move these down so it'll be a little bit flatter. And what I'll do is just duplicate this mask and turn it to subtract. Then I can feather this mask out and we have that reflection sweep like that. And I can also play with the opacity. I really love this reflection sweep element or detail, and it's always a good idea to animate this so you can hit P, maybe separate dimensions and just animate the Y position here. Now there's lots of other ways you can do a chrome sweep. Like I said before, it can also be straight. You can also have it coming from an angle or from the side, which also looks really cool. I really love this reflection sweep element. So now we want to create a white stroke bevel with the same techniques we used earlier to create the yellow stroke bevel. Now that looks awesome. So in this example, I want it to look like the bevel and the extrusion are part of the same object. That design looks really cool to me. We'll do this by making them the same color. So let's go to the extrusion composition, create an ambient light and just brighten everything up so the extrusion will be more white like the bevel. And if your text cap isn't black, you can cast those bevel shadows, which adds dimension and has a really aesthetic detail, but it also complements the look of the extrusion and the bevel being a part of the same object. Wow, I really love that detail. We also want to create a wall like we did in the orange example, and then create shadows, which really brings the scene to the next level. Freaking love those shadows. And there you have it, super clean, modern, and aesthetic. Pretty simple design. Alright, I've had so much fun creating these 3D text styles. I'll hang out with you more in the playlist. Click the link in the description. Please drop a like before you go, and also have a really cool idea. So I'm going to be recreating your visual effects shots. So in the comments, post a link where I can download the resources I need to recreate your visual effects shot, and you'll be featured on those episodes. So I look forward to seeing what kind of VFX projects you are working on. Also, I'm trying to build the ultimate collection of hilarious t-shirts. One simple way to have a less boring personality is just to be more funny, and that's what these t-shirts are for. You could go to funnyfinesse.com to entertain yourself. It's basically like a meme page, but with t-shirts. So you'll definitely have a good laugh. Go buy your favorite funny t-shirts from funnyfinesse.com, link in the description. So anyway, I'm giving out my visual effects, knowledge, secrets, and experience for free on this channel. So don't forget to subscribe and join the Visionary Fire notification squad. Otherwise, you'll miss most of this free knowledge and content. My name is Lyndon for Visionary Fire, and until next time, I'll leave you to it.